Hey, third grade, this is your math video for lesson 7.3. Today, you are just going to need your whiteboards. We are not going to be looking at any problems in our workbook. You will do those with your teacher. We are going to be looking at number stories with measurement. So it's going to be using time, mass, volume, and length. But to start, we want to review the steps to solving a number story. And then we'll get into the actual solving part. So when you read a number story, you want to make sense of the problem. So you want to read the problem. What do you understand? What do you know? And what do you need to find out? So look at the information that's there and then look at what question they are asking you. Then you want to make a plan. So what will you do? So basically you're looking at what operation do you need to do? Is it addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division? Is there a picture or a diagram you need to do? Do you need to make a table, a graph? Are they asking you to write a number model? A lot of the time they say a number model with a question mark or a number model with the letter that represents the unknown value. Do you need to make tallies? Do you need to use some resources like a number grid or counters? So just what is your overall plan for your problem? Then you want to actually start solving the problem. So you want to show your work. Showing your work is really important, even if it's a little tricky on the digital platform. But you want to show your work because if there is a mistake in your answer, we can see where it happened in your problem, in your work. Maybe it was just a simple fact problem that you had to solve that you might have had wrong. But showing your work just lets you check yourself, check your answers, and lets us as teachers see, where you might be having trouble. And then it says, keep trying if you get stuck. So if you're stuck with something, you want to reread the problem. Again, think about this first part, like this making sense of the problem. What do you know? What do you need to find out? And then think about the strategies that you've tried and then try new strategies. Again, that's why showing your work is very important so you can go back and check. And then you want to write your answer with the units. The units is hard. It's normally the last thing that you do, and sometimes we forget it. So you want to make sure that you are writing down what units it is. And then the last part is checking your work. So does your answer make sense and how do you know? If it's an estimation problem, is your answer close to your estimate? If it's a time problem, you want to make sure that you're relating it to elapsed time or time on the clock. Like, is it making sense to you? Same with mass and, length. It all is relative. So you're all just making sure that the problems are making sense and your answers make sense. You can always go back and double check your work if you are showing it. So what we're going to do first is we are going to do a time problem, an elapsed time problem. And I want you to do this on your whiteboard, okay? So please make sure you are following along on your whiteboard. So our first problem says, Sanjay catches the bus at 2:05 p.m. It takes him 40 minutes to get to hockey practice. Excuse me, I'm having a lot of slips. Practice starts at 2:30 p.m. How many minutes late will Sanjay be for practice? Okay, so if you go back to your plan, we want to ask ourselves, what do we know about our problem? Well, we know that Sanjay gets the bus at 2:05 p.m. It takes him 40 minutes to get to hockey, and practice starts at 2:30. And then the next part is, what are we trying to answer? So we're trying to figure out how many minutes late Sanjay will be for practice. So what you want to start with is, here it is, 2:05 on the clock, so 2:05, and we know it's going to take him 40 minutes. So what I would recommend is I would say, okay, how can I add 2:05 plus 40 minutes? Think about it, okay? So try it on your whiteboard, 2:05 plus 40 minutes. You could count by 5 until you get to 40 minutes and see where on the clock that takes you. You could add 2:05 plus 40 minutes, like an addition problem. But then you have to figure out how far past 2:30 is that time. So let's start. If I do 2:05 plus 40 minutes, I'll do 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. It would take me to 2:45, right? But that's step one of the problem. We're trying to figure out how many minutes late Sanjay is, not what time he gets there. So if he's supposed to be there at 2:30, but he doesn't get there till 2:45. What is the difference between 2:30 and 2:45? Well, let's see. 5, 10, 15. So we would say that Sanjay would be 15 minutes late for practice. Minutes would be our unit. Okay? So check your work and see if you got a similar answer. Now we're going to be moving on to some different number stories, okay? So again, these are going to be on your whiteboards. Our first problem says a sip of water is about 10 milliliters. About how many sips would it take to drink 130 milliliters? Now remember, milliliters are like the smaller units. Think of the eyedropper, where the liters are the bigger ones. So what do we know about the problem? We know that a sip of water is only 10 milliliters. What do we want to find out? How many sips it would take to drink 130 milliliters. So what do we need to do to find out the number of sips? We need to find out how many groups of 10 are in 130. And our unit would be sips. So when we give our final answer, we want to make sure we add sips to the unit. So for this one, you're trying to figure out how many times 10 can go into 130. So what are some strategies you could use to solve this? Okay, so think about that. How would you approach this problem? What is your plan? Are you going to add, subtract, multiply, divide, draw a diagram? What are you going to do in order to solve this problem? So you could count by tens. So you could start at 10 and count until you get up to 130. So if I would do that like a repeated addition problem, I would count by 10 13 times. So if I count by 10 13 times, I'm going to get to 130. If that's the case, then it would be 13 sips it would take to drink 130 milliliters. So I did 10 times 13, which equals 130. Think of it like 10 times 3 is 30. Well, 10 times 13 would be 130. So for this one, our answer would be 13 sips because I included that unit. Our next problem is also about milliliters, very similar to our last one. It says a runner takes larger sips after a race. She drinks about 20 milliliters per sip. How many sips does she take to drink the 180 milliliter in her water bottle? So again, what do we know? The runner drinks about 20 milliliters per sip. What do we want to find out? How many sips does it take to drink 180 milliliters in a bottle? How do we find that? What do we want to do to find the number of sips? Well, we would need to find out how many groups of 20 are in 180 milliliters. So with this one, if I count by 20, so I could do 20 plus 20, which would equal 40. So now I have 2 sips and it equals 40 milliliters. So if I do another sip, 40 plus 20, which would equal 60. So now I'm at 60 milliliters. And if I would do 60 plus 60 equals 120, good. I jumped. So we found out that how many sips was in 60 milliliters? 3 sips. So I just did 3 sips plus 3 sips. So this would be a total of 6 sips, 120. But we still have a little bit to go, right? We need to get to 180. So what if I do 120 plus another 60? Think of it like 12 plus 6, 120 plus 60. That would get us to 180. So we had 6 sips and we added 3 more sips for a total of 9 sips. So we would say to drink the 180 milliliter water bottle, it would take this runner, 9 sips to do it. And all we did was we just kept adding 20 till eventually we got to 60, which were 3 sips, and then we just added 60. So we were grouping them together, okay? This is another one, very similar problem where it's looking at how many liquid volume in 1 juice box would be in 3 juice boxes. So we'll go through these two kind of quickly together before we finish our video. So it says, the liquid volume of one juice box is about 150 milliliters. What is the liquid volume of 3 juice boxes? So for this one, we would need to do 150 times 3. So that's like saying 150 plus 150 plus 150, okay? Think of it as 15 plus 15 plus 15. What would your final answer be? So try that on your whiteboard. It would be 450 because 15 and 15 is 30, 30 and 15 is 45. Add it to the hundreds place, it would be 450, but then we would say milliliters because we have to add our unit. Okay? And then the last one says, art club ends at 3:30 p.m. Your mom arrives to pick you up at 3:10 p.m. If your teacher lets you out 5 minutes late, about how long does your mom have to wait? So if art club originally ends at 3:30 p.m., but you get out 5 minutes late, what time would you get out? You would get out at 3:35 p.m. So if your mom is there at 3:10 p.m. and you don't get out till 3:35 p.m., what would be the time difference? What would be the difference between when your mom got there and when you got out? Well, if you start at 3:10 and go to 3:30, that would be 2 10-minute jumps, so 20 minutes. And then you got out 5 minutes late, so you would have to add on another 5 minutes. So it would be 20 plus 5, which would equal 25 minutes. So your mom would be waiting there 25 minutes until you got out of art class. I wanted to record a quick example of the salute game just as a reminder. I know sometimes we forget how to play salute, so I just wanted to show you. So the salute that we're playing is we are playing with multiplication, right? So you have the 1 card, which is 9. You have your total or your product, which is 45. So you're trying to figure out what this other card is. So 9 times what number would equal 45? So think about this to yourself. 9 times what number would equal 45? Okay. This is just basic math fact practice. So this one would be 5. 9 times 5 equals 45. Okay, 9 times 5 equals 45. But remember, we used multiplication. So let's try it again. So 7 times what number would give the product of 35? 7 times what number would give the product of 35? Sorry about that. So 7 times what number equals 35? It would be 5 because 7 times 5 equals 35. So remember with salute, whenever you see a problem like that, it'll say, what the 1 card is. It'll say what the total or the product is, and you're trying to figure out the other card. You're not adding, subtracting, you are multiplying. So 7 or whatever that card is times what number would equal that product. So just a quick review of salute.